So hello, good people of the internet. This is Tommy Kelly, and this is the Tommy Kelly podcast. And the weather report that we will start this week with is that it's quite overcast and cloudy here. It's still quite warm, and in defence of the weather of Ireland, as if a country or the weather actually needs defending publicly on a podcast of all things, is that last week has been probably the best weather Ireland has seen in over a decade, maybe. Possibly, might be hyperbole, but it's been extremely warm, extremely sunny. Everyone's in great mood. Everyone's in great form. The whole country is uplifted. The morale of the country has been, brought up above depression levels. But it's been really good. It was even last week when I was went to see LCD Sound System. It was even commented out on stage that how weird it was that they felt to be playing in sunny Ireland. So it was quite good. So this week what I want to do is I want to talk a bit about my year in photography. There will be some magic bits in the middle. So if the photography bit, as in the chaos magic and art bit of Adventure and Woo Woo, and art bit isn't your thing, you might still find something interesting about it later on, because I'm going to be kind of relating stuff into a magic context, more magical community context than actual magical context. But it struck me that next month, on the 7th of July, will be 1 year from when I first got my camera and the whole photography thing started. So I'm basically, as I record, it's just over 11 months into being into photography. And if you've been following the blog or the podcasts or any of my social medias, you will see that it's become very much a huge passion of mine and all-encompassing, and kind of it's become like one of my main trusts in life and motivations, and certainly my biggest probably art expression at the minute. But it's so weird to think that it's less than a year, or just coming up to a year, since I got into photography at all. And it's bigger than that sounds, in that before this time last year, I didn't even have a camera phone. I didn't have any sort of camera. I wasn't really, it wasn't on the horizon. And the reason why I wanted to get into it, and why I ended up getting a camera, was because I had this big issue with photography in that I hated it, but and that certain parts of it I just absolutely loved. Like, I loved looking at band photography and certain, portraits and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the photography that I've been exposed to, and if you ask my family, they're very shocked that I get into photography, is because I hate looking at people's photos, like their holiday snaps or photos of the children, or things. I don't like photos in that way, and I detest and loathe photos of myself. Like, I can't. It's the easiest way to put me in any sort of a down or depressive form, is to show me a photo of myself as I kick the mic. So it was odd. My family would definitely say that it's odd that I get into photography, but it's not really. It's just it's that kind of, all of that kind of photo of the snapshot type of thing is not what I like about photography. And the things I like about photography are the things I like about art: interesting stories, or interesting mood, or lighting, or stuff like that. And for you're not getting snapshots of people's children in, with good lighting and good artists. Maybe you do, but in general you don't. And it's also just kind of forced sentimentality, or this forced emotion that it comes along with standard snapshots, is that they're not showing you a picture. They're kind of demanding you have this kind of resonance with this picture. I don't get that, because I'm not a huge, I don't really live life like that. Like, I don't have them kind of feelings. Not that I'm totally immune to having feelings towards other people. It's just like, if you show me your pictures of your holidays, I'd much rather sit and talk to you about it and have that kind of interaction than you show me pictures. Oh, and here's Bill and Jean that we met in the pub that night, and here's another picture of people you don't know, and here's our caravan. Well, that's all well and good, but which is interesting to me, because it'd be quite visual as well. Even when it comes down to music and stuff like that, I can, the whole feeling or my whole enjoyment of a song can be changed by the music video that goes with it. Where if it's a good one, can improve a song I didn't like that much to turn into a song I do, to in some respects ruining a song, because the visuals have changed in my head, I suppose, after that I associate with it. So the photography kind of stuff that I'd been aware of before I took up photography would have been stuff like Anton Corbijn, who was the guy who did an awful lot of U2's photography, Depeche Mode photography, and a lot of people would know him from the Metallica stuff that he did in the 90s, which would have been when they cut their hair and they became kind of a bit more grungy and very Anton Cobain-esque or whatever. The only other kind of photographer's name that I would have known before I got into photography was Ross Halfin, which is like he was famous enough for the Metallica type photos. And like it's very band type photos, not even kind of arty type photos. And I think I know his name because of a year and a half in the life of Metallica more than anything. So yeah, I wasn't massive into photography or knew an awful lot about it, but I was into images, and I certainly was into cinematography and video and all of that kind of things. And I really enjoyed cinematography because it has all those things that I enjoy about good photos without all the things I hate about, you say, snapshots or whatever. So I got the camera because I wanted a number of things. So I wanted a good camera because I said, well, something that I do like, and I think I could probably get some fun out of, not knowing that would, the level of fun I would get, because I was also turning 40 and I wanted to do something good. And Vanessa said she would pay for some of it, and I also had money from Patreon, so I was able to get a fairly decent camera. But my main kind of thing is I wanted something that would also be video, because I was getting into a lot of videos and I wanted to get into the vlogging and all of that kind of thing. So I needed to get that it was a camera, but it was mostly, to be fair, I was getting a DSLR for the video element of it. Because I'd been watching a lot of Casey Neistat at the time, and he was using the 60D, the Canon. And it's, rather than, thinking you get an actual camcorder or something like that, or using your phone or whatever. So for the most part, I was getting a DSLR for the video, to do stuff, to do vlogs, to do more, I had been doing basic kind of videos at the time on YouTube, but, so I could do the 40/7 course and all of that kind of thing. So that was my main trust, whatever. So when I actually got the camera and I got a Nikon D5600, I found that the DSLRs are quite limited in a sense in video, in that the quality and all that is much better, but you can only record for a certain amount of times. Now, there's kind of different thoughts on why this is. One, people say it's a tax thing, that there's a different tax band or a VAT band, sales tax on cameras compared to video cameras, that if it's a video camera, you have to pay more tax on it, where if it's a snapshot camera, you don't. And so there's a cutoff point that if you can record more than 20 minutes or half an hour of video on something, it's then classed as a camcorder. That's one train of thought that people have. The other one is that you just, because it uses mirrors and all this kind of thing, that it overheats, given more than half an hour. I would say it's probably more likely the tax thing, because people have jailbroken their cameras to record for longer than half an hour. And also there's certain software you can get that you can use your DSLR as a webcam, which means it's constantly on, and people don't, for the most part, have issues with overheating and that kind of stuff. So when I got the camera, I found out I could only record for like 30 minutes. Or you could record, it's 30 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, but there was different kind of, different rates, different resolutions and stuff that you could make, but the maximum still was always going to be 30 minutes. So my first thing was, this is crap, because I could record indefinitely on my phone, I could record indefinitely on my webcam, and these were the things that I was trying to improve upon, because that's what I had been using. I had just got my first mobile phone with a camera in it, because the one previous to that was like an old brick, an old Nokia that, you could barely make phone calls with. You certainly couldn't get on the internet, and there was no phone or no camera or anything. And obviously by choice, I don't like phones at all. As I said before, don't ring me, don't ever ring me. So yeah, it was quite disappointing in that, because I thought I was upping my game on the video type of thing at that point, and I felt like, well, I can do more on my phone camera than I can on this thing I spent some money on. But as it turned out, of course, that isn't the case, and the quality level that you get from a DSLR over your phone is an awful lot more. And I worked out, once I got over the panicky thing and it being the whole child, I didn't get what I wanted, I settled down, and it was great. And I really started getting into it. And slowly but surely, I started to, the first thing I did is I did a vlog every day for 60 odd days. And I did that to learn how to use the camera and all the different things like ISO, aperture, and learning how to use the different software and all those things. And for a long while, I was both doing vlogs and taking some photos, but with the emphasis being on the video element of the whole thing. So that it was always, if you was going out, it was going out to vlog with pictures being secondary rather than being at the forefront, which it would definitely be now. So the kind of thing that kind of changed, I suppose, where it went from video to photography itself would have been when I joined the club that I joined, the Dundalk Photography Society. And that came about because my friend Enda, who I talk about a bit on the blog, and he's in one of the vlogs, incidentally. He had gone for the last couple of months of the previous year, and he's an actual photographer, among other things. He's actually the singer in the band, the more or less very first band I was ever in. First band I ever gigged with, anyway, back when I was like 16, 17, or whatever. And we had kind of more or less stayed in touch over the years, and we had become fairly good friends in the last while. So he was kind of, pushing me to get into the actual photography thing, because that's what he was into. Like he's done weddings, communions, he's done that kind of thing. But he's done a bit of landscape stuff and other stuff over the years. And he had joined the club and was telling me, it would be a great thing for us to do together, in a sense, or it would be a great thing to get in and learn. And it certainly was, and it did get me push me into different areas and all that, and the competitive element of it and all that was good to a point, but with that I will come back to again. But so when that kind of happened, and then I got into the frame of that you had to have a 6 new images every month, the kind of pendulum swing from video to photography went closer to photography, because I had to do these things, and because I had to think about what's these 6 images, and it wasn't just go and take 6 images. Certainly not for me anyway. I had to take loads of images to get 6 good images. You have to take like 1,000 bad photos to get one good photo, or whatever ratio your talent lends it to. So then what kind of happened then is I started getting to software more. I'm spending more time in Lightroom than I had been in Adobe Premiere, which is the video stuff. I'd been able to use Photoshop because from drawing and from art and all that, Photoshop was something I had used over the years an awful lot. Even though Clip Studio Paint is what I always use for drawing. It used to be called Manga Studio, and I think they tried to get away from that name because it kind of very stereotypicalizes yourself. It was called Comic Studio at one point too, but now it's called Clip Studio Paint, which terrible name, but what's a name? The Beatles is a terrible name, but it's that's how it goes. So I was very aware of Photoshop. I knew how to do a lot in Photoshop, but even at that, there was so much more, because how you approach photography and how you approach art are 2 very different things. And one of the major things that I found out at the beginning of the photography journey, at that point when I joined the club, is just how scared competitive photography is of white and black spaces on the thing. The white thing they don't like is it's called either blown out highlights, where when the sun is so bright, or you've overexposed, where there's white areas, say, on people's skins and stuff like that, and that just that ruins, as far as they're concerned, ruins an image. The black thing as well, if you've too much black, because there's not a detail, they want detail in everything, and or terrified of having too much black space, which that was very hard for me to adjust to, because coming from a comic point of view, and certainly the way I draw, this whole idea of spot blacks is something that I love. I love those type of things, areas of black, area of high contrast, of using blacks and whites and stuff like that. So my kind of monochrome stuff in the competition never did tremendously well, because I was always battling with that, and I was trying to get something that would work competitively while having still my kind of, my own kind of style to it or whatever. And then I kind of realized, from having later looking at books and looking at like people I'm into and all that, that's just really a competitive photography thing. And I have loads of really expensive books, old photography books, expensive, by full of amazing photos that have areas of black. Absolutely, no problem. That would be destroyed at competition, and have areas of clipped out whites, which literally have no ink on the page, because the white of the page is the white brightness, whatever. Wonderful photos, they're brilliant photos, but that if I presented them in a competitive point of view, it would be destroyed, and you'd come home thinking that your photo was terrible, when in a sense it probably isn't. It's just not a competitive thing. So when I got into that, and I'll come back to the competitive thing in a while, and I know I have spoken about these things before or whatever, but it just seems like a good time to get the whole thing round. So by getting into these, having to do these monthly competitions, and getting more into, I got into Lightroom, and I spent an awful lot of time working around Lightroom. And my initial thought with Lightroom is the Adobe software that you use just for photos. There's no kind of there's there's not an awful lot of manipulation in it. You can't do, art in it and stuff like that. It's just for taking the photo you have and, balance out colors, contrast and all that. Like, it's more complicated than that, but essentially that's what it is. Whereas in Photoshop, you can move heads or you can change backgrounds and all of that kind of thing. So Lightroom is basically the play on the darkroom, which is where you used to develop your photos. So you develop now your digital stuff in Lightroom. And so I spent a lot of time then on YouTube doing tutorials or whatever. And then I was amazed to find that, of course, there was a whole section of YouTube of hugely famous and successful people on YouTube doing these type of things. And they're opening up this whole new community of YouTube to me as well. To the point now that YouTube is probably about 90% of my TV watching, if you want. That I would be more interested in what's going on in YouTube than I am on what's going on in most TV shows. I certainly don't watch any terrestrial TV or any news or any that kind of stuff. So all of my kind of media comes around, and it's still fairly filtered. I don't want to know much news. And so from that, I found out so much more about photography. Like, there's a guy called Ted Forbes who does a YouTube channel called The Art of Photography, and he's brilliant. And he goes through, and you can, some people like him, some people don't. He can be, I think he's wonderful, but I can understand people find him hard to listen to sometimes. But everyone's hard to listen to sometimes. But he does the whole history of photography and, the spotlights and different photographers and stuff. And so I learned an awful lot about different people, like people like Saul Leiter, who was this guy in the 50s and 60s who took photography, and he was one of the first color street photographers. And it wasn't until the 90s where all of this stuff was discovered or whatever. So there was this huge haul of stuff that was found in the 90s, and he kind of didn't get any kind of success until then. So I really enjoyed him. And then other stuff that I got into people like Sally Mann. Sally Mann would be an American photographer, and she has probably not, well, she's very controversial in many ways, in that she took a lot of photographs of her children, and some of them people consider morally wrong to have done. In some of them, there's nudity, there's a lot of nudity, and there's this slight sexualization in places of her children as well. And then there's stuff of like dead bodies, or there's one where one of her children was stung and her whole eye is all swollen up, and taking photos of that, and got in an awful lot of trouble over things like that. And you can, take it or leave it in what way you think. Should you be photographing your kids? Should you not? And it's like, well, what's wrong with nudity other than, what we have become as a society, and that, and we're trying to protect the kids, but at what cost, whatever. So I don't know the answer to that Sally Mann thing. And other than that, I like an awful lot of the photos, and some of the photos I do think is probably pushing a bit too much the sexuality of a kids at early ages, not quite put, the beauty pageant element of things, which is weird or whatever. But it's, but check it out and see what you think yourself about Sally Mann's work. She's a great photographer, and she also done stuff with dead bodies then later on, and then more kind of landscapey type stuff. So I enjoyed her stuff. I enjoyed Fred Herzog, he's a Canadian as far as I know, in the 50s, and he has the Kodachrome film stuff, so it's great colors. Again, all kind of street stuff. So it's getting already an attraction to this kind of street thing. And then, just looking at my shelf here and what other books I have on it. I have a number of books, just collections of like street photography. So street photography then became something that I became interested in. And the idea of street photography is that you go out onto the street and take photos. But it's so easy with street photography to get into the snapshot kind of territory of the type of photos I don't know, and at times you find yourself thinking things are more interesting than they are, and you get very careful that you don't just do like the snapshot thing. And you can look through some of the Facebook street photography groups, and you can see that, like, just looking at it, some people, in a sense, sounds weird, but get street photography or what it is. And other people are just like going, that's just a very random picture of anything on the street. There seems to be some sort of other twist or something that you have to have in street photography, that I know it when I see it, and I definitely can know it when it's not there. And you see for that certain photo, and you go, that's a snapshot, not a street photo. But it's like that thing that the famous thing about porn is I can't clarify what it is, but I know it when I see it. And the same with the street photography, I know it when I see it, but sometimes I can look at my own stuff and think it's, in a sense, more interesting than it is, and then it has to be a snap. It's just ultimately just a snapshot. So there was after coming from Sally Mann and stuff like that, I started getting into all of these other people. Some from the Ted Forbes channels and some just from searching out, Pinterest and Tumblr and stuff like that. And I came across people like Jack Sturges or a Russian guy called Evgeny Morkova. And they again have the same type of thing with Sally Mann in that there's a nudity element of children going on involved in it. Jack Sturges is from like a nudist kind of a background in that he lives in I think he lives in a nudist community and stuff, so it's just like he's filming those around, and he's been filming photoing kids from when they grow up to their adolescence and later and stuff like that. And he did, for as far as I know, got in trouble over his books, or he was something to do with someone made a claim that it was actual child porn, but he got away with it as well. Got away with it. It turned out it wasn't. That's what the law. That was what the case was. But again, it's interesting. Some good photos. But again, that you're talking about the questionable border of children and taking nude photos of children, and one, why would you want to, and other, why wouldn't you want, why wouldn't you? Like, it's just nature, it's just thing, and what are we so ashamed of nudity and all this thing that we have about nudity? But at the same time, we have to protect the kids, and the world isn't as free and easy as it is, was it ever as free and easy as the golden age in the back of my mind might suggest? So yeah, but Evgeny Morkova, he kind of has even a more weird kind of twist on it, in that he would go into orphanages and photograph kids, and a lot of it would be nude and stuff like that. And there's a documentary about him, and I think it's called Fragile, and he's quite an odd person. And it's worth watching, but it's just part of it that is all a bit kind of creepy. And he does a bit in that documentary, does a bit of street photography too as well. But some of the things that I got then out of YouTube that were really pushed me into, how I approach photography and all that, would be more people like Sean Tucker, who's an English guy. And he used to be a priest, and you can tell, he has this kind of not somber, but he has a very serious kind of approach to his YouTube channel and his art and his photography and stuff like that. And I found him really interesting. That really got me a kind of I could feel that kind of approach, and to be seeing it as a proper art form, and expressing yourself and being quite serious about it, without be serious about it, not be serious with it. Like, don't take it too seriously, but do what you can as best. And from all that kind of that whole new community thing as well, it kind of brought stuff up to me about the magic community and stuff. In that we were always, or I'd always point out, by always, I probably said it twice, but in my head, I always said in CMG that there was an equivalent when we were all sitting around talking about how awesome we are to be into chaos magic, and how great we are to be free from whatever our past would be, like, may that be fundamental Christians or just normal Christians, or whatever our background was, that these restrictive things, and thinking we're great, and sitting around laughing at people who have different weirder ideas than us that are obviously untrue. It always struck me that there's probably a load of guys sitting in a Jesus forum on Facebook saying the exact same things about us, and self-congratulating themselves, and them knowing the truth, and them getting away from the witchcraft or the new age or whatever it is. And it really opened my eyes when I seen just how big a community was around photography. Meant that there's that kind of, probably that big community about any topic you want now on the internet, whether it be photography, and being a mechanic, airplanes, or gardening, whatever it is. And from chaos magic, like, look at all the chaos magic YouTube stuff there is, or even occult stuff, or magic in general, that there wasn't 2 or 3 years ago. And so it's just because it kind of feels like now to me that both magic and photography is ubiquitous in the universe. But at one stage I had to go looking for that. Like, I did not know who Ted Forbes or who Saul Leiter was, who Sally Mann was, Sean Tucker, James Popsis, Peter McKinnon, any of these people. I just had no idea who they were this time last year at all. But yet have become so prevalent in my life now, that and the whole idea of all of the background of photography that I then went further into and stuff, and all of these different people like William Egginson or William Klein, or I don't know, names, Peter Lindbergh, or 100 other names that I can't think of the top of my head, of different photographers who I didn't even know existed this time last year. So I found that interesting, that how sometimes your past can change, And what that I mean is that it always feels now that I always knew all this stuff about photography, that I always knew about ISO and exposure triangle and apertures and these different photographers and the approach and the rule of thirds. Well, I didn't know about the rule of thirds actually. I think I could do that from art. But all these kind of things. It feels now that I've always known that. And it feels the same that way about chaos magic, that I've always known that. And it's not in the sense that people go, I've always known this on some level. It's that memory has played a trick in me, and it's stuff that has now been so, so me now. So something I know intensely now, and all knowing, or have not all knowing, have a sense of it now. It feels like I always knew that. And that's kind of hard because it means that it's very hard to track your own progression, because as soon as you learn something becomes the new normal, it seems like you've always done it, like it's something that's always been there. And so that's something I have to become very aware of, particularly with photography and with photography, because it's so new, and not to become stale with it or burnt out with it because you think it's always been around. And that was one of the things that happened with the club and with the competitions and stuff, that I certainly became burnt out and I became far too serious about it and too much. I became kind of anxious about it, and in a sense competitive, but not competitive towards other people, competitive with myself and towards, trying to do well. And it was only now that I've come out of it and the club has been finished a couple of months that I kind of look back and go, what was I doing? What was that? Like, I'm not into that. I didn't join the photography club to win awards or to get letters after my name or to enter salons or any of these things. That by the end of it felt like this was what photography was all about. And that's what I'm saying. It kind of feels like this is because things have become normal. It feels like that's how they've always been. And so when you get away from it, you go, well, that isn't how it's always been. It's like when you've been hanging around with a friend for too long or listening to too much certain Canadian lectures on YouTube, or I'll acknowledge that Robbie will give out to me for talking about him. Or whatever it is, if you've been reading a certain type of book or if you've been watching a TV program and you find yourself taking on the kind of thoughts and ideas or whatever and feeling that that's the norm. It's like when I was reading an awful lot of certain chaos magicians or certain occultists or whatever, and you kind of read it and you think, oh, that's what it is. And then you pull yourself away from it and you go, well, no, I don't have to believe it just because he believes it, or that just because that's his approach or her approach. That doesn't mean that has to be mine. And you can get caught in that. And I've spoken about that before. So the good things about the club, whatever, is that it certainly gave me momentum and a focus to get things done, and to further yourself and all that. The bad thing about being in the competitive scene is that you're basically doing a sport rather than an art. And photography has an awful lot of rules in that you have to have, some way of marking these things, because things are so subjective. There has to be a way that people can determine on a scale, on a gauge, what is good and what is bad. And photography suffers from a thing in that there is a likelihood that someone who's never ever taken a photo before could take a great photo really, really quickly with a camera. Whereas someone who's never done sculpture before is highly unlikely to accidentally make a great sculpture. Not, it's just so that it's like, it's not to say that photography is easier, but it's something. Well, it's certainly easier than sculpture in many ways, or in other forms of art, in that you can, instantly take a photo straight away by getting a camera, whereas you can't instantly sculpt something, or paint or draw. You can't draw a head the first day you decide to draw, or an eye, or any of these things. So there is an element that it's easier. Now, it's harder in other ways and all that kind of thing, and the expression of yourself and all of those things. So to have all these kind of rules, like the things, the blacks and the whites, things have to be on the rule of thirds, all of these type of things. And it becomes more about a checklist than actually expressing yourself, which is what I always ever want to do from art, is express myself and reflect things that are inside me outside in the world. And I found that by the end of the club this year, that I was being molded into something that I'm not or don't want to be. And that to be successful in kind of competitions and stuff like that would be to lend yourself towards being something that, a new road, a different thing than where I would naturally have progressed without going. And it was only coming out of it and coming away from it and doing certain photo shoots recently that I realized just how much I had been, in a sense, going down the wrong way. It's certainly one way of saying it. But as if I was molding myself into something else and into being this kind of other photographer than what I am, because I had geared myself towards competitions rather than artistic expression. And it's having come away from it, and particularly on Saturday, myself and Enda, who I talked about earlier, who got me into the club, we just went up to Dublin and we spent the entire day just doing street photography, and it was so much fun. And we weren't looking for competitive good images. We weren't looking for for anything other than to get them, send them to each other, and put them up on Facebook or whatever it was. I put mine on the website, that kind of thing. That was it. Not to enter them into competitions, not to get letters after your name, not to get certain awards or any of these things. Just for the expression of it, for the learning of it, for the photography of it, for the outing, for the exercise, for all of these things. And that feels like photography to me. That's what I want from it, and that's what I think that if I continued in a kind of a club or competitive setting, that I just won't get, because I take it too seriously and it puts me in areas that I don't want to do, and it gets me, while it certainly made me up my game, and I learned so much from the focus and the attention and the people, and that the club themselves are great, all that kind of thing. It's the amount that I will have learned from the club is not going to be exponential. It's going to be less, and I think that anything I will be more curbed than learn by continuing in that kind of competitive thing. Because number one, I'm not into it. It's not what I want. It's not ever. I've never in my life entered an art competition, So why did I suddenly all of a sudden think that this is the only way to do photography is through competitive stuff or through the sport element of it? As I turn my sheet over, and so it's just kind of like, so I don't think I'm going. And in fact, I know I'm not going back to the club next year. And I may go back in the future, so I'm not, never say never and all that. But I went into the club probably too early. I hadn't established myself enough in my own self of what I wanted to be as a photographer, because I hadn't really thought so much about photography, because like I said, I was doing the video, more focused on the video until I got into the club, and then I just didn't realize how much I love photography. Absolutely love photography. And it's amazing, because it's like young people, oh, it's life-changing. Getting into photography has been properly life-changing for me, and that it's changed my brain. It's changed my outlook in life. It's changed how I see the world massively. And how I interact socially and all those things. Like when I think about things that I could, photograph or whatever, that like if I had to go to, I don't know, if I had to go to like the thing I photographed about the night run where everyone did the 5K in the middle of the night, so I did the here in town. But if I had to go to that without a camera, it'd be, I'd go, oh, what am I doing? But whereas I can get excited about it now, and about these type of events, or a parade, a Patrick's Day parade, woohoo, I get to bring my camera, whereas before it'd be like, oh my God, what's the last thing I want to do? So I've a different kind of approach that way too, and all that, which is great. But it is only great because I'm not looking, for basically for 20s. That's the thing we said. And the 20s thing is because you were marked at a 20 for your photography at the competitions. So coming up to the year, and it's like, what a year. And it feels like I've been taking photos all my life, and it's never been a part of me. And it's like something that's become so ingrained in me, this thing that it feels very weird that it's not even a year yet, that it's something I've been doing. And I hope it continues to really enjoy it. After leaving the club, it was interesting because I was going through my Lightroom catalogue recently, and I was showing, different folders or whatever. And from the club up to the end, there was a lot of photos. And then as soon as the club left, it was a slump. There was like one folder for 2 months where I had taken 30 photos or something over 2 months, or a month and a half or something like that, just because I had no interest in photography after the kind of the spike of the end of the year of the club and stuff like that. And I felt like when I had finished with certain bands, going on tour with certain bands, where I just ended up, I couldn't listen to music anymore. I didn't want to be around music. One in particular, when I was on the road for like a good 2-year stretch with a cover band, and at the end of it, for about a year, I just couldn't listen to music at all, because it all felt too much to like work, because I spent too long doing something, because I was a sound engineer, didn't ever wanted to be a sound engineer. I spent too long doing something I hated in an area that I loved. and it spoiled music for me entirely. So I think, without being, too dramatic about it, I think competitive, for right now, competitive photography could probably put me in the same position as how I felt coming off tour, having been a sound engineer for 2 years, because it was so close to what I wanted to be, which was a guitar player or a singer, but wasn't what I wanted to do. And I think the competitive and the club thing of photography is so close to what I like, but isn't what I like, and has the same potential to turn me against it. So that is my year in photography. I'm sure I'm looking at my notes now. I had other stuff I was going to say, but I'm sure I have bored you to tears enough about it. But it is chaos, magic, and art. Adventures and Woo. That is what my mission statement is. So I'm entitled. I always feel like I should apologize for talking about art, or even when I'm putting up the photos on the website, I kind of feel, oh, this isn't magic. But that's not what it. I never made a promise that everything would be magic or chaos magic or anything like that. So, yeah. So that was the Tommy Kelly podcast. And what I've noticed is that every time I come to this end bit, because I kind of stop the recording and then start the recording again after I take a drink of water, it's I in some sense feel guilty about the entire episode I've just made you listen to. Like, oh my God, they had to listen to all that. And it's like this end bit is, while it's usually just like telling you a bit about the websites and all that stuff, it's kind of in one sense trying to be apologetic for, oh, I'm so sorry that I'm so shit and I talked about stuff that I'm interested in and then possibly you're not interested in at all. And I do probably apologise in a roundabout way an awful lot at the end of these, like, oh, that was so rambly, and oh, that was all over the place, even though they are rambly and all over the place. But yeah, it's interesting that I have to apologise for a podcast that I set up for selfish reasons. So I will stop that. That podcast you've just listened to was possibly the most ultimate and amazing podcast on Tommy Kelly's first year in photography you will ever hear. And I'm not sorry I did it. And I think you should listen to it twice and possibly take notes on the second time so that I can quiz you later just to see how much you were listening. If you would like to hear other podcasts, a lot of them are about chaos magic, some of them are about art, some of them about general life, then go to tommykellypodcast.com and you will find all the episodes there. On a Monday it goes live on Patreon, and on a Thursday it goes on general release to the entire world. You can also go to adventuresinwoowoo.com and you can see all my photography there under the photography section. There's a big picture that says photography. Click on that and you get all the photography posts. I also have an Instagram, which is @TommyKelly. I have a new Tumblr, which is @TommyKellyArtist. So it could be Tommy Kelly photo. Check the show description. That's literally 2 or 3 days ago and I can't remember what I did it. There's a Twitter, which is @TommyKelly. And there's a Facebook page for my photography and my art, which is Tommy Kelly Artist. That's definitely Tommy Kelly Artist. All of these will be in the show description, or you will find them at the bottom of any post on adventuresinwoowoo.com. There's a whole promotion, and links section at the bottom of every post. Also at adventuresinwoowoo.com, you can find the 40 servants and everything you want to know about them. There's been a new version of the 40 servants that went out. A bigger box. It's slightly bigger, nice box, comes with the 4 devils, and I'm delighted with it. It came out really well. I'm very happy with it and couldn't be happier with it. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out. There's some pictures on the website about that. But if you just want to know about the 40 servants in general, which is a chaos magic, divination and magic tool, so it's for both for divination and for magic. So I would say people use it more for magic than divination, or at least people who talk to me would probably use it more for magic than divination, but very worthwhile divination system if that is what you're into. So you can go to either the 40servants.com, 40servants.com, or click on the 40 servants link on adventuresinwoowoo.com. And that'll find you there. You will also find out about the 4 devils and magic in general. There's a ton of posts over there. If you'd like to help me out and get the word out, then please just tell other people about the podcast, tell people about the 40 servants, tell people about the YouTube channel. While I'm talking about the YouTube channel, I'll say there's a 40 servants course in there, a free one. They'll tell you all about the 40 servants. There's the vlog, as I talked about earlier on. There's a couple of different vlogs about photography if you want to know more about that. So yes, liking, sharing, telling people about it, talking on social media about it really helps. All of that is really, really, wonderful. And if you could leave comments and ratings and all that kind of stuff, I would really appreciate it as well. The other way you can actually give me some money if you want by going to my Patreon, which you can find at tommykelly.com, and it's TOMMIE Kelly.com. And that's, if you want to actually give me some of your hard-earned cash to actually do more of this, to upgrade my stuff and to get, better equipment and better hosting. I've literally just paid for another year of top-class hosting with DreamHost, with the money that I got from Patreon this month. So that's great that I can do that. I was delighted that I get that. It's really fast. It's, it's less than, 3 seconds. It's that fast. Everything loads. It's certainly faster than what I had previous to that. And what I offer you in return is the PDFs of all my comics, PDFs of the Grimoire of the 40 Servants, digital download of the 40 Servants, The Journey, which is a year-long meditation using servitors, and there's, what else on it? Yeah, you get things earlier. You get the podcasts on a Monday rather than a Thursday, all depending on what reward tier you look at or what different things. There's parts of the audiobook of the 40 Servants, which I need to finish at some point. So loads of things if you want to check that out. That's tommykelly.com, and that'll bring you to the Patreon. So, good people of the internet, may your best days be ahead. May you not feel that there's nothing new in the world, because this time last year I had no idea how much my life would change because of buying a camera and clicking a button and looking at the world differently, and it has dramatically changed. And it would be very easy, as I had done before then, thinking that a lot of all the best days are behind and there's nothing new, and it was just there's some sort of sense in many ways, depending on how dark my mood was, that all the goodness was gone and that now it was just hanging around until you died. That's a happy thought. But there's so much that you don't know could change. You could get into photography, you could get into snowboarding, you could get into painting, you could get into gardening or whatever it is. And I hope that you do find something that will give you a new lease in life and reinvigorate you and make you feel great, make you want to get up in the morning and feel excited about walking around a city for no reason other than to, click buttons or to meet people or whatever is your new passion. So don't feel that when life is getting grey that it's always going to be grey. There's so many things, and so easily things can change, and life can get very tough and very hard, as we've all seen in the news. And there's a lot of people didn't do well and didn't do it, and I've certainly been in situations where I felt that life it was too hard. The reward wasn't big enough. And it's important in those times, and I know it's so hard to remember that there is a good chance, and there's a very good chance that there is better days ahead. And it's worth hanging around just to see what's on offer and what can happen. And if my story is a testament to anything, even something as simple as buying a camera can dramatically change your entire course of your life, and for the better. I've talked before about it's not, it's so much easier to do something negative and destroy your life and all that really easily. And the example is you can take a knife and go out and stab someone on the street and your life is dramatically negatively changed. And I don't think there is a positive equivalent. But one kind of thing would be that you can take up and do something new. And it's not as instant as stabbing someone randomly on the street. Taking a photo of someone on the street and taking up street photography can be rewarding more on the long run. And I think we have to work on the positives, because it's the default seems to be negative, because we live in a universe that is entropic and falling apart, as it seems, from the beginning. So find something new if that is what you desire. Reinvigorate your life, bring more colour into your life, and I wish you the best. And I hope that all of you are doing okay, and that you're happy, and that you're getting enough of reward of life, and that it's not too tough for you, and that the shit that we all go through, that you get past it, and that your struggles seem worth it to you, because it's all too easy in this day and age to lose hope and to lose faith and to not want to be around. And I wish and I hope that for you that you have nothing but happiness, and that life is worth the battle. So good people of the internet, I love and honour you and cherish you, and I'm so happy I met you, even if it is virtually through a podcast or through a website or through social media. And may you all be well, and may you have a fantastic week, and I will speak to you all next week.